Hello, Paul Armstrong and Mike Gent here. We're going to talk about Ducky Carlisle, well-known Boston-based engineer, producer, musician. There's going to be a tribute show for him at the Brighton Music Hall on August 11th, 7 p.m. That's in Boston. A long list of performers are going to be on this show. So I got some of them jotted down here. Barrence Whitfield, Sal Baglio, Nat Friedberg, who was on this show talking about Ducky not too long ago, Anthony Kaczynski, Emily Grogan, Blue, and many others, including our guest Paul, who played with Ducky in the Flashcubes, and Mike Gent from the Figs. Hi, guys.
Hey,
Hello.
You know what I'm
hey, what's
curious
happening?
of? I'm curious, either one of you can start, but I know you've both known Ducky for a long time, and I think that you guys have roots with him outside of Boston. Can either one of you
Yeah,
start and tell?
I'll start because that was me. I grew up in Syracuse, New York. Always wanted to move to Boston because I was a huge Red Sox fan. But so I was working in Syracuse at a local music store. I was playing in the Flash Cubes, and this guy came in with a little beard and wire rim glasses, looking for drumsticks. And he said to me, "Hey, my band's playing an open mic night up at Syracuse University on Thursday or whatever. Why don't you come and see us?" And it was Ducky. And I went to see his band. They were phenomenal. The Ohms, they were called. And within a week or so, they were opening for the Flash Cubes. And I got to say, him and I hit it off from the beginning. He became the sound man for the Flash Cubes when we were in our first go around. We toured all over the country, playing Detroit, New York, Max's Kansas City. And Ducky would do our sound, and just a hell of a guy to hang out with on the road. We are getting up to all kinds of mischief because we were still really young. Not that we didn't get up to mischief when we were older, but so met Ducky at that point, and we started. I got kicked out of the Flash Cubes for being too punk rock, which I'm still proud of. And we started a band 145, and we played in the Syracuse area for about 3 years. And we actually, there's not a lot of new original music out there, and people were into it. So we were playing like 4 or 5 nights a week, all up and down the East Coast. We figured the more we played, the more women we'd meet, and that turned out to be true. And so then in 1983, we'd been coming to Boston, playing a lot and doing pretty well here. We were open for the Real Kids and the New Models, all these famous groups, and playing great shows. And one time we were playing Steev with the Jet Black Berries at the Rat, opening for them, and we never went home. The four of us just stayed in Boston, flopped with Ducky's sister, and then we were here as 145 for years. And so I played with Ducky till about 1988 in 145. And then over the years, Ducky's been the backup and the fill-in drummer for the Flash Cubes. So we've gone to Japan together, played hundreds of gigs in the Flash Cubes together. And we both played with Sal Baglio for a number of years in the early 2000s. And we got to go to England together playing. So I played on 3 continents with Ducky and
Wow.
known him. I've known him all that time and still talk to him almost every day. And the one thing I want to point out, and this will segue into Mike, is all of us considered Ducky our friend, our best friend. There's probably 10 of us. So he was the kind of guy, he didn't have a best friend. He had 10 guys that thought he was their best friend. It was kind of profound, but he was my best friend. He was Mike's, Blues. You can go down the list of guys. But to Ducky, we were just his friends. He was such a people person. So take it over, Mike.
Yeah, I agree. I maybe more than 10, probably 1,000. uh, yeah, I don't go back as far as Paul. Obviously, I mean, I met Paul through Ducky, and we became buddies, and that was something that Ducky loved to do, which was introduce his friends to other friends that he had. He was always saying to me, "You don't know this guy," and I always had to remind him that you know I didn't move to Boston in 1983. I moved to Boston in 2001, maybe, from New York City, but. We met at the Lizard Lounge, and I don't even remember who I was playing with, but I was doing like a guest spot or something, and there was an amping guitar already on. Well, they don't have a stage, but already there for whatever guests that were coming up, and I played through what was set up, and then I went to the bar to get a drink. And this guy goes, "Did you like that guitar and amp?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah, it was great." And he started, and I said, "I love that he brought a Les Paul Jr." I said, "Oh, I felt like Ariel Bender." And from that moment, I was friends with Ducky, and we just hit it off. He always reminded me of that initial meeting up and how quickly we clicked, and you know, out of both a business relationship with him, a working relationship, and a friendship, you know, we just clicked, and it was always a flowing conversation and a flowing, comedic, a lot of comedy going on, and that's what I always look for in a great friend, is to be able to make each other laugh, and that, as anybody would know, being friends with Ducky, that was like a major element to a friendship with him, is that, laughter, of course. But the music thing, we just immediately clicked with our taste and knowledge and love of music. We just really never argued about any of that. And yeah, that's my kind of start with him, was just borrowing a guitar and amp at a gig.
So many people that I've met over the years, whenever I've been around the Boston area, talk about working with him, and they used to love working with him. Now, I know you worked in the studio a lot with him, Mike. Do you have a lot of stories or
Paul
any
too.
stories about working with him, like the Figs or whatever? You worked on
Mm.
other projects too with him
Yeah,
too, right?
yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, Paul too. Paul's has a million billion stories of working in the studio with Duck.
Yeah,
Um,
I was just gonna say that I'm kind of lost without Ducky now. Most people use GarageBand and work at home, and all my recording I've ever done my whole life, I did at Ducky's house, even if it was for something where everyone else was remote. I'd go over there, not only because I could hang out with him, but he was so intuitive and on the money with his musical vocabulary matching mine, that I like to have him say, "Oh, that was great. Do another one," or "That sucked. You can do better." Or he could be very critical, but he always made me feel like I got the best performance I could have, and he was very nurturing. And it's just such a great thing to be sitting there cranking out on the guitar, playing a riff, and your engineer standing next to you, dancing, playing air guitar along with you, and laughing and going like this. It was just so inspiring, and he just pull a great performance out of you.
yeah, absolutely. I think that that was what attracted everybody to him in the recording sense of working with him in recording. I do think that he was a great producer, and on top of that, a phenomenal engineer. Uh, he got the best out of whoever he was working with. Uh, you know, I made a as well as you, Paul. I mean, we made a lot of records together, and different kinds of records. Yeah, we made some Figs records together. Those were probably some of the best sounding records that band has ever made, and easiest records we've ever made. Just because he got it, and once it started flowing, the one thing I have to say about working with him, especially at his studio at Ice Station, um, what was wonderful about it, and I had never experienced it prior to working with Ducky, was that, the first session I ever did with him alone, he said, "Go, try see if the drums are all. I just need to test all the drums." Within 5 minutes, we were cutting drums. There wasn't a full day of miking the drums, the usual studio stuff of, you know, people setting up mics, and then you're hearing a snare drum being hit for 5 hours, and then the kick drum. None of that. He had everything dialed in, as everybody that worked with him knows, and it was wonderful. And I couldn't. I said, "This is how every studio should be." Uh, he just had his thing dialed in, and especially drums, because he was a drummer, and it
And
was it was beautiful.
that's the key thing when you're recording as a musician too, is you want to get rolling. A lot of times engineers are sitting around screwing around with all the controls, and you lose your mojo. With Ducky,
Yeah.
you do it, then you're right on it. 5 minutes again, you're doing, "Hey, give me a break. I got to go outside and smoke some weed." "Ah, come on." But in 2 or 3 hours, you do what would normally take 10 hours with someone else.
Yes.
And the best thing, it wasn't work. It was having a blast And at the end of it, you created work, but it wasn't like you were working. You were
Right.
hanging, having a blast.
Yeah, there's so many studios where the drums take a whole day to get set up before you can even start playing. But you guys sound like that was not a problem in Medford.
No,
Well,
absolutely not.
he had,
It's a money thing too. It's a, well, we'll get a day out of setting up gear. You know,
Um,
that wasn't the case.
he always pretty much was in Medford, right?
no,
No, no.
I was just thinking about that. There's a long history of Ducky recording. So back in
Charlestown
that,
is where he started, or
no, he started in his college dorm room with a TX
oh,
4-track reel to reel, and he made an Ohms record, and I have it. It never came out. It's a 10-track Ohms record. It's fantastic. And after that, at his apartment in Syracuse, when he was the sound man for the Flashcubes, we actually made records. I actually have songs that have been on TV shows that I'm making money from that were recorded in Ducky's living room at his apartment on a 4-track. And for anyone that knows anything about recording, that's a completely different thing. You got 4 tracks to work with, so you get everything on the, and now you're bouncing, so you're mixing it as you go, and you don't have a lot of latitude. But he made great sounding records that way. From there, we moved to Boston, and he didn't really record for a while. He was more of a drummer and a party animal. But then he actually opened a space in the New Alliance building that was called the General Tire Building at the time, down in Kenmore Square by Fenway. So that was his
oh, he
first.
was at 1312 Boylston Street. I didn't
He
know that.
that place was called Room 9 from Outer Space, and he recorded a lot of people there too. And so,
Yeah.
Ducky was there, Alvin was there, John Hartcorn from the Neighborhoods had a studio upstairs. Robert Holmes had a consignment shop. It was like a little music community of weirdos and freaks. It was just great. And from there, he moved down to South Boston, and he had a place where the convention center now stands. And he was there for a few years until at one of his sessions, they went out to eat, and someone threw a lighter in the trash can as they were going out for
Cigarette.
dinner without really. Who was it?
A
Yeah,
cigarette, like a
cigarette
butt, right? Yeah.
into a trash can, which went up. And I had a big cheap trick poster I'd given him on the wall that sent that up. When they got back from dinner, the studio was gone. And Ducky, though, he moved to his house in Medford, and that was actually a really good move for him because he was always late for sessions in South Boston. He was always fighting with his girlfriend on the phone for whatever. So this way he could fight with his girlfriend in person, and just he just had to walk downstairs for a session. It was just Mike. Did you ever record in Southie, or did you start it?
No, because I was in the first I had ever heard of Ducky was when I was living in Providence briefly. I bought a house, our first house we bought in Providence, and I was going to get my amps worked on by Steev Sonic Chord, who you know.
Yeah.
Yes. And he brought up Ducky, and that was my first kind of introduction to his existence. But that studio was still happening at that time in Southie. But also I need to say that we got to give Blue props for pushing Duck into doing the studio in his house.
Right.
That was Blue. He told me that he really made that happen as far as like, my studio just burned down. What do we do? What do I do now? So yeah, I missed all the Room 9 stuff. Although I was very familiar that building that you guys are talking about in Kenmore, I worked in a bunch of times in the late 90s, early 2000s because Woolly Mammoth was in that.
Yeah, he took it over from.
And I made.
Yeah, Dave took that over from John Hartcorn.
He was Capertown Sound at first on the second floor, and then he took over the big room, and it became Woolly Mammoth. Yeah, that was around 99, I think, 2000, 99, 2000, 98, 99, something like that.
Yeah. And then we also did stuff at New Alliance too. Gentleman did a few things at New Alliance too, I remember.
When did he?
And there was
sorry.
There was rehearsal spaces in that building too, right? As I remember it.
When did he move to Medford?
Oh boy. 2000 maybe.
Oh, so he was there for a long time.
I'm not sure.
I thought it was earlier than
it might be.
It was earlier than that, 90s.
One thing is one of the good reasons for having me and Mike on is I was heavily involved in the music scene, heavily involved in the party scene, until about 1988 or 89. And then I decided I want to grow up. Getting arrested will do that to you. And then I had children. So from about 95 till about 2010, I was unplugged from the music scene. So I'd go record with Ducky and I'd play gigs in the Flashcubes and play gigs in one forever. But I certainly wasn't going to the clubs and running into the people that would lead me back down the dark path that I was trying to escape. So I was kind of unplugged. So a lot of my stories dovetail great with Mike's because he picked up right about when I was bailing out. Because Mike,
Right.
we were both knew Ducky great, but you and I met probably 4 or 5 years ago through Ducky after hearing about you for that long. Was it longer than that? Yeah, probably.
It was longer than that because when we met, I started selling guitars for you,
Right.
and that was more than 5 years ago.
Yeah, it
That
was.
was, I would say, more than 10 years ago. Um,
Time flies when you're having fun.
Speaking of guitars and equipment, isn't Ducky famous for having a lot of equipment?
Oh yeah. He not only had equipment, he had all the pieces that everybody wants. I have in my room next to me here, I have all kinds of great vintage amps and vintage guitars. I didn't know what to get. It was always Ducky. You got to get one of these. You got to get. He was like my consultant on gear, and that's just on
yes.
guitars and amps and pedals. But then at his studio, he's got the compressors everybody wants, the boards everybody wants, the mics everybody wants. And the thing is, even with all that great gear, that wasn't the key to Ducky. The key to Ducky was just how fast he worked, his musical vocabulary. You could say, "Oh, I want it to sound like Ian Berenson on Pilot." He'd have it dialed up in 2 seconds, and he was just amazing. It's just the gear was part of it. And another thing, he had ears. Everyone who talks about him said he could hear things that other people couldn't hear. And after dwelling on it since he passed, he actually had a lazy eye, and one eye moved and the other didn't. So he didn't have any depth perception. So I'm figuring now, after he's gone, I never thought of this at the time, that people overcompensate for a loss of one of their senses by another one, like blind people can hear and smell better.
Yeah.
So I think the lack of depth perception gave him a musical depth perception because he would always explain to me that when you listen to music, it's three-dimensional. Some of it's up here, some of it's, and you get this whole landscape, but you don't hear it until someone points it out to you. So I think he had a depth of field with his ears overcompensating for his eyes.
Did he ever go into other studios and record like I know you must have worked at Q a lot, right, Mike? I mean, did you ever go
Yeah.
to
Yeah, he did. I mean, he went, he made a few of the Buddy Guy records down in Nashville. I mean, yeah, for sure.
He used to go to St. Bart's and record with G.
Yeah, yes. And he worked at Q. He did sessions at Q. He did sessions with the Tony Visconti at Q Division, and he got fired. I think. um, so yeah, he did other sessions at different studios. But I think that he was obviously most comfortable with his
yeah.
dialed in setup. You know.
No, I was surprised when I was looking at the list of people he recorded with: Mandy Moore, Demi Lovato, Buddy Guy,
I'm
who you
on that.
mentioned.
I'm on that
I was going to
Mandy
ask you
Moore
about
record.
all of these,
Yeah.
if you played on any of these. Let me just give you the names, and then you can tell me what you did. Mandy Moore, Demi Lovato, Buddy Guy,
Yeah.
Susan Tedeschi, who's from Boston, Nora
That's early.
Jones.
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
chime in quick.
Oh,
I
go
just
ahead.
want a quick Mandy Moore story. I used to always just drop by Ducky's studio just to hang out and say hi. No matter who the session was, I'd go in and just crash it and whatever. But I get there one day and Ducky says, "I'm recording Mandy Moore." I'm like, "Oh wow," because my kids are into Disney at that point. So I came in and I was dying to go to the bathroom, and there's someone in there, and so I'm waiting and waiting, and all of a sudden out comes Mandy Moore, and Ducky says, "This is my best friend, one of my best friends, Paul. You got to meet him." "Hi, Mandy, great." She walks out. I went into the bathroom. Oh my God. Whoa.
Oh boy.
On record.
You might edit that one.
maybe
No.
maybe I was down waiting to. I did vocals on that Mandy Moore record on I think 2 songs, maybe 3. I did a bunch of backing vocals on that record. And I always wonder
Used a
in
different
the back
bathroom.
in the back of my mind, I was always thinking, like, what did she think when she first walked into that house, like into the back porch? And because it was, I said to his brother John, I was like, man, your brother David, was a hoarder. He loved to hoard stuff, but thankfully he hoarded amazing stuff. Um, and I brought clients into that studio, into the home studio, and it was, it was like I didn't think twice about it as far as it being clean or there being shit everywhere, CDs piled in every room, and just stuff everywhere. I loved it because I love that kind of thing. But for somebody that's used to going to very clean LA, you know,
Professional.
professional studios to be to be brought in by your producer and say, I got this guy in Medford, he's going to blow your mind, and you like this record, oh, he did it, let's go there. And for her to walk in and I just always thought, like, wow, what did she think? But she seemed, when I was there with her, she seemed very at home. And Ducky always talked about her making food and being very chill there. So, um,
Mike, you're hitting something that I've come to the realization of recently, is that even though we have these gods that we look up to, like the Beatles or the Stones or whatever, they're just regular people that are used to going into places like that. Like I was recently
sure,
watching the Stones rehearsal at some place, and it looked like a rehearsal place down in the New Alliance building. It wasn't like there was gold plated everything, and they're just regular people like we are that live regular lives
sure,
in regular stores. But we all tend to put them up here because they're gods to us. But she probably
yes,
just thought it was just like going over to a friend from college's house, or something like that.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I
Did
mean so that was the only session that I did of something. Well, no, that actually that's not true. I brought Graham Parker there to do a whole record, which was a great time. Um,
did you
and then
tour with
I did.
Graham
Oh, go
Parker
ahead.
also?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
thought so.
We worked together for about 18 years.
Wow.
Between Figs stuff with him, and then I was his drummer for two records. And then we did a tour supporting one of those records where I was the drummer and band leader. So we worked together for almost 2 decades. Yeah. Yeah.
And he
And Ducky
also,
was
yeah, he
oh, go
worked
ahead.
with Ducky also, right?
Yeah, I brought Graham there for a session where Graham's publishing company wanted him to re-record stuff to be able to place it, in TV shows, ads, or whatever, without having to deal with the original owners of the masters. So he recorded we re-recorded a bunch of stuff with Ducky at his house. And Ducky was, I mean, I knew that Ducky was a huge Graham fan because we had talked about it, obviously. And oh man, he was just thrilled to have Graham Parker. He was like, he took me aside. He was like, I can't fucking believe Graham Parker's in my house right now, that kind of stuff. Um, but yeah, yeah. I mean, and I did sessions with other, you know, he would call me and say, hey, come over and sing backing on this. Once we had a working relationship where he knew, oh man, this is your guy. And that was the thing about him too, where he would be doing a session and the client would say, oh, I need this. And then he would go through his mind Rolodex and be, this is your guy, and call whoever, have them come in. And so it was, that kind of relationship with him. One thing I want to say that we Ducky and I did a record with this guy PJ O'Connell, um, who is also passed. Uh, he's well, at the time he was living on the Cape. He's a Cape guy, and he was kind of in the mix with NRBQ for many
Hmm.
years. He had a relationship with those guys, and he had Ducky. He did a solo record, and he had Ducky put together the band. And it was and Ducky said, you need Mike Gent, you need Mark Hickox, you need Tommy Ardolino on drums. uh, and that was the band on most of that record. And I think it was one of Tommy's last full records that he played drums on. And it was incredible. And oh, we were me and Ducky were in heaven recording with Tommy. It was really when I think of all the work and all the records and stuff, that one really always I always think of that one because we just had such a blast, and me and Ducky were just so thrilled to have. That was another case where I know that because Ducky was such a huge NRBQ guy that I know that he was thrilled to be recording Tommy and Tommy's drums, and Tommy got behind the kit, Ducky's set up in the studio, got behind the kit. I didn't see him move one
Uh-huh.
thing, and he just started recording. It was magical and beautiful, and we should also, Paul, we should also talk a little bit about Felicia's if you're recording with Duckett and going to Felicia's
Oh yeah, for lunch had to do that.
or dinner.
Yeah, Ducky was always a connoisseur of fine food too. There was always a meal involved. There was always a phrase that you'd get the mix about where you wanted it, but you didn't want to do it just yet. So sounds good, let's eat. And you'd go eat, then you'd come back, and you listen to it again. Oh, sounds great, let's go.
Where was Felicia's?
It
Stoneham,
was
or
yeah, it was right up the street from him in Stoneham.
it was an
Probably a
Italian
five.
restaurant. It was in the North End for years, and then the rent drove them out. It was one of the famous places on Hanover
And they
Street back
moved
in
to
the day.
Stoneham.
And they moved to
Yeah,
Stoneham, and they're now out of
yeah.
business, as they say,
Oh,
location, locate.
but Ducky went in there so much with so many clients that the whole staff knew him. He was like the norm of Felicia's. We'd walk in, Ducky, and they'd give him a special booth, and everybody knew him there.
Aside from many of the more well-known people that I mentioned, there's a long, long list of Boston people. I wrote about, we mentioned Blue Corin Ashley, who called, I think he says he coined the phrase med pop. He started calling Ducky's med pop. Uh,
Mm.
Damone, air traffic controller, Bang Camaro, Mike Viola. We mentioned that Fire King double record is
Yeah,
absolutely
yep,
amazing. Asa Brebner, and we talked about the amplifier
Asa.
heads, of course, of the Gents. I know that record On the Slide, I think it was called, you guys did with
Oh
Ducky.
yeah, Figs. That was a
Yeah,
Figs record. Yeah, yeah,
I
yep.
said the Gents. Sorry.
That's all right.
The
That's what we should have
Gentlemen.
been. We should have been called the Gents. Actually, the Figs. That's a
Wow.
way
I have to
better name.
talk to Ed
Along
V
the
about that.
I always liked Ducky would turn me on to new music, and a lot of it was the bands he was recording. I remember going in there one time. He says, "You got to hear this band," and he plays Little Lord Fauntleroy by the Upper Crust. He
Yeah,
actually did the original. So the first time I heard the Upper
Yeah.
Crust was with Ducky, and again, he's got it playing at 120 decibels, dancing his ass. I was just so infectious. And another group like that was Waltham, who at the
Oh,
time they
yeah.
mm,
were they were going to go places. But
yep.
again, he played Waltham, and they were like, "Wow!" And then he did like the best. They had a. I'm not sure exactly what happened with Waltham, why they didn't get signed, but Ducky would just tell stories about their man. He was a great storyteller too, and I just remember hearing about Dave. Was it Dave Pino, the main guy in
Pino
Waltham?
brothers,
Yeah,
Frank
yeah,
and
Pino
Dave.
brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, Frank and Dave. That's right.
It's
But I heard that.
I
interesting.
think.
Go
Oh, go
ahead.
ahead.
I was
No,
going
I,
to
I just I
Zoom.
was just gonna say that I know that Blue had recently mentioned to me that there's the Waltham record that Ducky did. I don't think ever was
Didn't
released.
right.
Right.
They thought they were going to get. It might have been one of those things where they got signed, then the A&R guy got canned. The same old story
Yeah.
that someone, and then no, they
Mm-hmm.
didn't own their master probably. But he did the Damone record, and that was
Damone. Yeah.
Dave Pino from Waltham, and that's a great sounding record.
Yeah,
Yeah.
these are some real heavy pop rock records, when you talk about those bands. Yeah, I didn't know that I knew he did a lot of stuff with Nat, but I didn't realize he worked with the Upper
Oh.
Crust.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Well, I think he was involved. Yeah. 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 Definitely. I mean, I know that. Also, yeah, all the Nat stuff that towards the end of Ducky's life that he did. I mean, he was playing in Nat's band.
Yeah,
You
him
know.
and Nat did everything basically on some of
Yeah.
those solo records, which he put out like 4 or 5 records since
Yeah.
2000.
Quickly. Yeah.
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 The show, who put the show together? That must have been quite a I love when people, I've been involved in some of these big shows with a million bands. They're never easy, but this will be special since it's a tribute. And who's done all the work on that?
It's a like they say, many hands make light work. So we have the funny thing is, since Ducky's died, there's probably a group of maybe 10 or 15 of us that have all coalesced into this group of friends of Ducky that are, and it's been a team effort. We've got probably, and everybody that Ducky knew are successful. So they're all type A's, able to get stuff done. So there's various things that various people have done. But Sean Wardis is the main person behind the celebration. But I'm working heavily with him, getting the acts, and Mike's working, playing in the band, and Corin's playing in the band. So there's just a lot. Blues very helpful with everything. Corin, Sean, so we're all putting it together. And you say, that they're kind of crazy. We'll see how it goes. It hasn't happened yet, so hopefully it won't be too much of a train wreck. We got a lot of people, a lot of egos, not a lot of time.
Usually, usually they don't bring the egos with them at shows like that. Hopefully, I'm
Yeah.
sure with the people.
Well, that's a rule we have. What's Sean's phrase? No heroes. So yeah, we had a couple people that started telling us how they wanted to be presented at the celebration. So we just took those people. I got to bring my guitar player, and it's, dude, there's 20 people want to play. We haven't got time for that. So just And the funny thing is, two of the biggest guys that we have playing are Boston legends, Barence Whitfield and Sal Baglio, and they're both good friends with mine, and I played some gigs with them recently. But they're both so chill. Whatever you want, Paul. We're just here for Ducky. I'll do whatever. Just tell me what you want, and we're there, 100%. Then you got guys you've never heard of. Well, if my guitar player can't come, I don't know. So go screw yourself then. We don't need that.
It's
Just
funny you mentioned Sal and Barons because they work together on the amplifier heads. It's some of the best work that Sal has had since. I mean, I'm not saying they're better than the Stompers, but you know what I mean. Some of his
You'd be
recent work.
surprised. I should give you some of the records he did with Ducky under the name Rocky Rollins. They're fantastic pop rock records. He did them in the early 2000s. There's like 3 or 4 of them. And it's because Sal was in the Stompers. They had a certain sound, that New Jersey almost kind of sound. They were very successful. But Sal, when you get to know him, what he really loves is the Rolling Stones, T-Rex, David Bowie, Mott the Hoople, all the same stuff that the rest of us guys like. And he just has an incredible taste and talent. So didn't mean to interrupt there, but there are a lot of other records that Sal's done with Ducky.
You mentioned Sean. I'm pretty sure that Ducky did that Slide record, right? Sean's band
Yes.
Slide. Yeah, that was a good record. Good record. So is there so Sean's putting it together? Do they have? I imagine there's a back line
Well,
and there's.
go ahead, Paul. Go ahead.
Well, we actually have a Zoom call tomorrow to try to figure out how this is all going to work. But we basically have a backing band, which is, various people, Jim Janota, Mike, Corin Ashley, and others, with solo artists coming up.
Oh, nice.
We're gonna have an opening of a lot of the big people opening the show with one of Ducky's favorite Paul McCartney songs. It's going to be the big opening. Then we're going to do a bunch of solo acts.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
I didn't say what the song was.
Hey, wait! Just
Mull of Kintyre.
I gotta make a correction. I don't think Corin in the backing band though.
That's right. No, you're right. It's Mark Hickox.
And Sal. And Sal is in it. Yeah. Mark Hickox. Yeah. But go on. Sorry.
But so then there's going to be a bunch of solo acts with the backing band. Probably 10 or 15 of those. And then there's about 5 or 6 bands that are all going to play. Now, with all these people, everyone's going to get to play 1 or 2 songs. So I'm in the Flashcubes. Flashcubes are not a live band anymore. We did our 40th anniversary show a few years ago. Haven't done a gig since. But now with this is an opportunity where everyone's like, yeah, we got to play. So, but we're only going to do 3 songs. Blue, Mike Viola, and then Sal and Barence to close the show. It's going to be a good rock and fun night. And the whole spirit of what everyone's saying is we're doing this show for Ducky, standing there in the front row, dancing and laughing his head off. When I'm playing, I'm going to be looking right up front, and he's going to be there in my own mind's eye.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have to give credit to Blue for, there's actually 2 sections of the day, and that's a invite memorial service for him at the same venue, and then the show, which we were talking about, the public show, which Paul and Sean have really kind of taken the lead on putting that together. So those three guys, I mean, Blue on the end of the actual memorial, and then Sean and Paul have really put a lot of the heavy lifting into figuring out all the band stuff and all the musicians, and
You know why that is, Mike? You know why that is, though? It's something I taught my kids. If you want things to go your way, you got to be in charge.
Yeah, that's right.
That's going to be quite an event. It's a few weeks away. Before I let you guys go, do you have any another story that or something about Ducky that you want to talk about him as a person or a session or anything at all?
I'll go first there, and I talked to him almost every day for 40 years. We would, a lot of times just going over the stories, raping, pillaging, and plundering redux, all that kind of stuff. I just miss him like hell. And the funny thing is, though, he was on a decline during COVID because he wasn't working. He liked to have a bit of alcohol now and then, and he just was on a decline. And all of his friends, myself, Mike, Blue, Corin, we were just trying to get him to straighten up and save himself. And we were all trying so hard. We tried to do a Zoom intervention with him. And even at the end, he was happy that he was dying. He would say things like, I've done 3 Grammys. I played hundreds of bands. I've scored with hundreds of chicks. What have I got to live for? And he was actually good going. So I've been, as you kind of like let it all sink in. And I had another friend of me say recently, well, isn't that perfect? We all would like to die when we want to, not when we actually die. So Ducky was, we were all fighting it for him, but he was good with it. So he's actually in a pretty good place. So that's not really a story. It's maybe more of an observation of how it all went down at the end, but he's in a good place.
Mike?
As many of his friends over the years, and especially over the last, 5-6 years of his life, I love as any of my close friends know, that I love talking on the phone. That's like my, main way of keeping in touch with friends is yapping on the phone, which I get from my mother. And he did too. And he was wonderful for like long nights when I'm driving back from a show in New York or driving back from somewhere. I knew he was awake, and we could shoot the shit for hours, and he could guide me back to my house. But the beautiful thing about him is that he always said at the end, I love you, brother. And sometimes I love you, fuck you, that kind of thing. But that is something that I miss a lot, is that connection of whether it was a good conversation or bad conversation. There was a lot of uncomfortable get me off this phone kind of conversation. However, the majority of them were, I even missed the bad ones. So, I hope that everybody can come. I got to also say that I wanted this celebration to be a whole weekend, because, one day is not enough for this guy. So I'm going to, personally make the most of it and just have a blast like he would. And I hope everybody else, especially the people that are getting on stage, I hope they realize that this is not a gig. It's just a celebration of the man.
I just want to chime in one quick thing there. Similar myself, Ducky and I had a way of when we were on the phone, we'd be on for an hour, and then we'd try to see who could hang up on the other one. I'd say, hang on a minute, and then I'd hang up. And then he'd call me back, and he'd start talking, and then he'd hang up. And that was one fun thing we always did. But the other thing, he never told me he loved me much. We'd always end our phone calls with, go F yourself. But then we would say later. That's our way of saying love. So, see you later.
Yeah.
Go F yourself.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the thing is, I have so many memories with the guy, and now it's funny when you lose someone like that, because now I have these memories and I could talk to him and we remembered exactly the same. But now if I told some of these stories, people say, oh, you're so full of shit. That never happened. So I kind of, it's nice to have a close friend that can validate, whether it's a partner or a male friend, whatever, just to, share those memories. Because once they're gone, in a way, the memories are gone. You have them for yourself, but no one else is going to believe them, because they weren't there and didn't know, what we were getting up to.
Sure,
So yeah, we miss
sure. I
him.
mean, what is beautiful too is that he, like I said at the beginning of this conversation, is that he loved to connect friends together, and that you and me, Paul. I mean,
Yeah,
you've been like a lifeboat for me as far
same
as
here.
you know, as
We
able
picked
to
right up.
talk on the phone and shoot the shit.
It's great to know someone that loves Billy Squire and the Darkness and all that Brian Adams. All the stuff we talk about, you can't talk about to your other friends.
Yeah.
Well, hey guys, thank you. I think we covered it unless you guys have anything else. I mean, it sounds like this is going to be a really beautiful event for a memory, for the memory of Ducky Carlisle. So thanks a
Yes.
lot.
Yeah,
And
thank you,
thank you.
Steve, for having us on. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
All right,
Thanks
guys.
for thanks for giving us the time and the platform to spread the word.
My pleasure. Thanks.